Hello and welcome back. This is Sherry with Heart and Soulful in Studio B today. So I want to share with you some things I've been learning about digital. If you're just joining me for the very first time, this is a perfect beginner video if you've ever thought about purchasing digitals. So if you're just joining me for the first time, welcome. I hope if you enjoy this video, please give me a thumbs up, click on subscribe, and hit the little bell if you would like to receive notifications when I do post a new video. So I decided to do this video because it's kind of basics. I am brand new to buying digital kits. I just started buying a few things that were missing in my collection, and I had started making some digitals based on some specific journals that I was working on and some backgrounds and that sort of thing. So I thought, I know as a beginner, it can be really kind of overwhelming. You see these digitals on Etsy, lots of creative people are making them and selling them. There's different types, different formats, and all that sort of thing. And so I thought, you know what, it might be fun to cover what I have learned. I'm not an expert by any means, but I thought I would share what I am learning with my viewers because kind of that's why I started the channel. So I'm going to kind of set some of my mess aside and go into a few basics, and then I'm going to do a separate video on how ways to maybe store your digitals that you've printed out and collected or storing them on your computer. Now, I don't have all the answers. I'm just going to share with you what I have learned and what I am doing so far. So I've noticed in buying digitals that there are different types depending on what you're looking for. And you can easily plug in the search bar anything and so many things will pop up. So I have a few examples here just for fun. You can buy complete digital kits that would be based on a certain theme to build a certain junk journal or project. This would be an example of that. This is my Vintage Grunge Journal, Volume 1, based on the journal, which I don't have here because I'm in Studio B. But this was some items that I created from scratch, from photos that I had taken or elements that I had that I took photos of and scanned or different things like that, and just created a package of items that I used in a specific journal project to make those available so that if you were doing a ghost town themed journal like I did, you would have some of the same elements that I used in my tutorials. So a kit is one type, and then there are also backgrounds. There's a lot of people out there doing maybe there are painting paper or doing some artistic finishes or that sort of thing. And they create these kits of background. And the fun thing, you can do all sorts of things with backgrounds. You can use them, print them out on double-sided paper like I've done on these. These do have a border you'd want to trim off, but they're beautiful backgrounds that you can just fold in half, trim to the size page you want, and now you have all these folios that you could put together and put together a journal, having the backgrounds and then do all of your embellishing on top of that. Or you can even use them in your own digital creations that you then use in your project. Now, when I say that, using maybe backgrounds or even elements from someone's digital collection, most, I would say 99.9, if not 100%, of people selling on Etsy, including myself, they will have in the description what they're offering with photos and all of that. And then they will have what you're allowed to do and not do. So I recommend reading each description thoroughly so that you know what you're getting. For one thing, you might not realize when you see all these beautiful papers and it says digital download, you might not realize that you're not getting an actual physical product in the mail printed out like this. You are buying the access to use those digital files, which you'll download onto your computer. And as long as you don't delete them and have them there, you'll be able to use those over and over and printing them out at home or having them printed out at an office supply place or a printer, a private small business printer. Now, when you do that, before you've purchased your kits, you want to maybe check with your local printers where you might want to have them printed, what the cost of printing full color things are, because you might find out it's quite expensive, depending on the product and how much color and all of that. It's going to be using a lot of ink. So whether you're using your own printer at home that's a color printer, you're going to go through lots of cartridges. I have both an Epson cartridge printer called just a regular, not expensive printer. And then I also have the EcoTank printer in my other studio. So I've worked with both. As far as quality, obviously the more you spend on a printer, the better quality you might get. My Epson EcoTank printer is the 5500, so it has the extra gray tank, which is more colors to make your product. So that's a better quality maybe than my Epson here, but which is also just fine. So a lot of it depends on what you want to use your digitals for, what kind of quality you really need to get out of them. For junk journaling and that sort of thing and paper craft, a lot of times they are backgrounds that you're adding lots of other things to. If they are a focal point, you might want a better clarity and that sort of thing. But a lot of that has to do with the paper you use, not necessarily your printer. It's a combination of both. So I recommend checking to see with your printer's manufacturer what paper they recommend for that printer, and always use the correct printer settings for the type of paper that you're using, and then you will get the best quality that you can. The other thing when you print is most of them will just default at like normal printing. You can do lower quality when it's something that you don't really need to be, have the clarity. That'll use less ink. But if you really want to do like a nice photo quality of something, then you want to bump that up to a high quality. So it's important to remember paper settings to match your paper and to check your quality when you're printing. So that's kind of part of it as far as the expectations you might have and how you are going to print out those digital kits that you might purchase. And that would explain when you see that price on there, why it's so low. If you're going to purchase a printed out product, which even on my digital kits, I would offer to do that, but I'm probably going to want to do it on a good quality paper at a high quality, so that the product you receive in the mail is the best quality that I can give you from my printer at home. And that would mean that those are probably going to cost around $1 a page. And that's not me making money on it. That's the cost that I've calculated from purchasing the paper and printing it and packaging it up and sending it off to you. So keep that in mind before you buy a digital kit. Read the description about what you're getting. The other thing you want to pay attention to is in that description, reading what's allowed and not allowed. Like I said, I would say 99.9, if not 100% of the sellers out there are allowing you to use that digital kit. So if you were to buy this kit or my other kit, or here is a couple of kits I've printed out several pages from Roxy Creations, her French Chateau series. When you're buying these, you're buying the ability to print these out at home, which is what I have done. You can print it out on any kind of paper that you want to print it out on, at any kind of quality that you want, depending on what you want to use it for. And I'll kind of show a little bit more about that. But you're not allowed to take this, manipulate it, change it, add a thing to it, and then sell it again in this format, whether a printed format like this or as digitals. So that's pretty strict. The reason we're sharing our artwork with you is so that, this is just giving you an alternative to buying, to going to, your hobby store and buying a 12 by 12 pack of paper. This is just giving you some artwork that other people, like me, have created. Then what you do with that is you create a journal with that. Like I've used that paper pack in my journal. I'm going to be, decorating different things, elements and stuff using those paper packs. Then I can go sell this journal if I want. I just can't, print these out, sell them printed out, or even in digital form to somebody else as my own product. I can't do that. Even if I were to, crop this piece and add, something else, a different element, I've changed it. That's not what this license is for. You're only allowing yourself to use this in your own projects that you might be later selling in that form of a project. Okay, so I hope that's very clear. There are other companies that you can, graphics companies like the Graphics Fairy, Tom Chalky, there's others I'm sure, where you can buy a certain license and they'll have maybe different ones for different prices. They give you the ability to use their graphics and put them together to create this collage. You know, for example, I'm not saying that's the case for this one, but maybe you found a graphic that's this photo, and maybe all these, this was a graphic, and maybe this text was a graphic that she purchased through another graphic company where she has a license. She put those elements together to create her original artwork and then is selling that. And usually there's limits to how many graphic elements you can have in a piece of art. So you may be only able to use 3 of their elements, and all the rest of the stuff has to be things you've outsourced other places, or you took a photo of a book cover that you owned that's not copyrighted that you could use. So that's just a little bit about where these designs come from. And what you're allowed to do when you purchase a digital kit on Etsy. And it's a lot of work, and I think if you've created any kind of digitals, you know that, to do any of this graphic design, to go and find all the parts and pieces and then to put them together in a pleasing way. It takes a lot of time. So, you know, they're passing that artwork along to you for a really low price just so that you can use it for your own creations. So that's a little bit about the licensing and the types of kits. Again, there's kits, there's backgrounds, like I said, where you could, you know, I kind of got sidetracked because these are backgrounds and you might want to use them as a background to create your own digital, but you couldn't use that in a kit. You know, you could use it in your own end product that you're going to sell, but you can't take my background and put it into your own digital, say using it as a background in her kit and then layering things on top. That wouldn't be okay because she's then selling it in a digital form where she's just altered it. So that's kind of a little bit about explaining that so you understand what those do's and don'ts are meaning. The other types you can use, again, would be like little sayings. You'll see a lot of little quotes and things. Again, I couldn't take just this and plop it onto my background paper and then turn around and sell that to somebody else. But I can buy this, take this out, use it as a quote that maybe I've glued onto a card or something like that, and now I can sell my product. So that's kind of what that is. You'll find, you know, things like this, quotes. These are little blank tags, which is pretty handy. And I'll go over these a little bit more as I get into different ways I like to print them. But those are the kind of elements, we'll call those. Let's see, graphic elements that you can fussy cut out, you know, like this type of thing, or little graphic elements, you know, flowers, butterflies, anything you can imagine and plug in. You'll maybe find pages of elements that you can fussy cut out. And then you might find things by subject matter, like this is a whole kit of vintage maps. So, you know, that's kind of a subject. I have another one that's all office papers that I'll be going over later. So there's a lot of different types of digitals that you'll find out there that are really handy to have, because it would take me a while, unless I had a vintage atlas that had all these maps in it. I could spend, you know, a long time trying to collect books that had these in it. So that's the kind of the handy thing about being able to buy digitals. So if you've never done that and you're looking for a specific theme for a journal that you're working on, something like that, go to Etsy, plug in the search, and just put, you know, digitals for whatever, and lots of stuff will pop up. So the other thing that I have noticed are file types. So if you're not familiar with file types, I think everybody knows what a JPEG is. I'm going to kind of talk about this in very simple terms because I'm not a tech person. I may say some things that are incorrect, so if I am, please leave a comment down below and correct me. I'm happy with that. But I just kind of want to share the things that I have kind of figured out, at least, and kind of remember them in my own mind. So back to the couple of kits that I have here that I've done. When I look at it, consider a JPEG, I think of that as a photo. So it's gonna, you know, it could be a black and white photo or a color photo, doesn't matter. But the quality of printing out that product will be like photo quality. I kind of think of it that way. And it actually stands for Joint Photographic Exports Group. So it is to how they compress, I guess is the word, that photo into a file that we can, transport it and share it on the computer. Okay, so these I do as a photo. It's my little collection of all the pages in there. And actually all of my digitals I do as JPEGs because I want them to print out at your end at photo quality. Okay, so that's one type. The other type that you might see are PDFs. And in my mind, I think of a PDF, it actually stands for portable document format. So that D is for document. And so in my mind, I think of a PDF as like a flyer. A PDF can have a photo in it. If you think about a flyer you get in the mail or an advertisement or something like that, there's lots of text, but there may also be pictures. So that may be in a PDF format. Okay, it could also be in a JPEG format. But I'm just going to go over kind of the three that I mostly see in digitals. There are others too, but I won't go into those because I think these, if you're going to purchase them, this is what you're mostly going to find. The other type is a PNG, and a PNG stands for portable network graphics. And when I think about a PNG, I'll try this one. Okay, so I think of a graphic as an element, okay? And I kind of look at this as a graphic design, this one tag cutout. So this one is probably saved as a JPEG because there's a lot of color and it's a photo and she wants us printed out at my house at a photo quality. So I think though as a PNG would be these three elements, but they could have a transparent background. So on a JPEG, you don't have a transparent background. On a PDF, you don't have a transparent background. But on a PNG, it could be a white background, but these elements are all maybe separate graphics. I'm probably not describing this correctly, but I think of a PNG as possibly being these three elements on a transparent background. The reason I kind of like those or to make those is you can print that out then if it's a transparent background onto something else. And I'll show you an example of that. If this was not saved as a PNG and you know how through another app or a program or Photoshop or whatever, know how to remove that background, you can isolate these elements as individual items and save it as a PNG with a transparent background, and then you could print it out onto, say, book page. So these flowers, I got those off of Tom Chalky, I believe, and I put them into a document on Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator or any kind of graphic program. You can put those with a transparent background, save it as a PNG, and then you can print it onto anything and you'll have that layered look. So that is kind of why I like PNGs sometimes, depending on what you're working with. So again, like I said, I like the quality of JPEGs, so that's usually what I save and export mine, so that when you receive it digitally, you're going to get it as a JPEG. Now, some of them I have downloaded are PDFs, and maybe I want to adjust the size or color of it. Well, you can't do that on a PDF. It needs to be saved in a JPEG format or in a PNG format in order to adjust the size or color at your end. Now, again, you're going to do that for your own use. You can't just do that and then turn around and sell that product. But I like to do that for my own use because maybe that document was given to me, I purchased it, and it's this size. But maybe I just want a little tiny element of it. I can adjust this size by printing it and telling it to print 2 per page, 4 per page, 16 per page, whatever my computer allows me to do. And then I haven't had to manually change the size of that object. But if I want to, I can't if it's a PDF, if I want to manually change the size myself and plug in dimensions. So what I do is if I'm going to change anything that I purchase, I make a duplicate copy of it first so that I always have my original in the size and color that it was sold to me. That way I will always have that one. I duplicate my file, and then if I want to save it from a PDF to a JPEG or a PNG. I work on a Mac, so I double click on the little icon of that page, and it will bring that up in preview. And then I can go to File, Export, and then it'll give me options of what format I want to export it in. And I go ahead and I save it into a JPEG. And now I have my original And then I have the JPEG that if I want to change the size of it, the color of it, play around with it, distort it, do whatever I want to it, I have one to play with that allows me to do that because it's in a JPEG format. Now, I'm not a computer specialist again, but I do know that when you start playing around with those, sometimes you can affect the quality of your final product. And by quality, I mean how many pixels or dots per inch that it is. Most of the digitals that you find will say scanned at a high resolution in their description because maybe they're scanning pages in a book or a book cover or something like that. You hope that they have a really good scanner, can scan at a really high quality with a higher number of pixels, and then that way the detail's finer. You know, if you ever look at something that's grainy, it's because it has a lower number of either DPI, which is dots per inch, or PPI, which is pixels per inch. So you want to purchase something that has a 300 DPI. If you see 72 is what will look fine on a computer screen. And so I think a lot of times the max in what computers default to for a high is 72 because you're seeing it well enough on your computer screen. But when you go to print it out, it's not going to print out as clearly as if it's a 300 DPI. So when they've exported, say they've scanned a document, when they go to export it, they're exporting it at that higher number. And then you get a really nice, clear, crisp, quality where the letters don't look blurry and that sort of thing. So you just look for that. But that's what those numbers mean and descriptions if you don't know that already. So like mine will say 16 sheets of photos and embellishment. So there's going to be 16 sheets in the pack, and it's going to be a combo of embellishments that you can cut out and photos, that sort of thing. And then it says 300 DPI JPEGs. So that means I have scanned these and exported them at the high DPI, and that they are in JPEG quality format. This one is in 8.5 by 11 and A4. I had a request to do that because in the United States we use 8.5 by 11 paper, and in Europe, everywhere else, they use A4. And A4 paper is narrower and a little bit longer. It's not even like our legal size. It's a little bit narrower than that. So when you try to go from size to size, if I were to only do it in 8.5 by 11 and I'm selling it to somebody who needs it in A4, if they put their paper in their printer and they pulled up this document and they would say print to my A4 size, it's going to squish everything and stretch it out. So it's going to distort everything. Vice versa. So if I buy an A4 size and I try to fit it onto 8.5 by 11, it's either going to crop something off if I want it to scale. If I want, if I want this bottle to be the same scale as this bottle, to fit it on that paper, it's going to crop it different. And if I don't do it to scale, it's going to distort it. So for this particular kit, I offered it in 2 sizes. I have yet to see a kit, not that they aren't out there, but do that kind of offer. But so you want to pay attention to that. Depending on where you live, what type paper you use, you want to look at what size it is. Now, just because I live in the United States, I can order A4 paper on Amazon and print it on A4 paper at home if I want. So this happens to be what I have handy. I have since purchased A4 paper so that when I am making my kits, I can do test prints on A4 size and make sure they look how I want them to look. The other thing that I have noticed is because most of the places I have been purchasing are kits from out of the country. And so if you look at this one, for example, I've printed this onto 8.5 by 11 paper, but you can see that she did this in A4. And you can see that the design, if it's narrower paper and a little bit longer, it didn't change that design at all. She has a bigger border around here. So I maybe need to consider that when I'm designing mine, that I'm making my design that will fit within 8.5 by 11 and A4. And then you can print it anywhere on any kind of paper, and you're not going to have altered the scale of your actual embellishment or whatever it is. So those are just kind of things to think about. You may not think about that when you're purchasing a digital. So the other thing that I like to do, we've gone over, you know, the size, kind of the DPI to look for. Now, when I say that I like to adjust the size of things, it can be important when it comes to things like labels. Okay, so her original design came in a sheet of labels, and she actually did a thing that I really like, and I have actually done it on my clock face. I have a digital kit that's all different clock faces, and I've done them on different sizes within my page, kind of like she's done here. There's some larger labels, some little different shapes, some smaller ones. So it's a sheet of different size things. The other thing that I like to do and that she's done is she's offered it in color. So this is, you know, there's some green ones, blue ones, red ones, and burgundy ones. But then she did the same exact sheet, and she did it in sepia. See that difference? Same labels, just different colors, just to give me more options. And then she also did them in kind of a black and white. So to do that, if you say you purchase something and it only comes in the color version, for example, that's how this one came, only in these colors. So I wanted to change it and get some more variety out of the colors, because this just has kind of this tan, kind of a pinky burgundy color and a blue. So I had this, I don't remember, I almost think these were only in PDF, if I recall correctly. So I couldn't adjust the color or the size because they were PDFs. So I took that file, I duplicated it. I took this file, duplicated it, and then I know these sizes are different, but you can see it's this part is this. So the original file, I know I'm kind of confusing you here. The original file she had looked like this, only in these colors, okay? But this large size. I went ahead and I stamped on this white part myself, because again, like Tracy's, there was all this extra white around here, and before I cut them out, I don't want to waste that paper. So I just take my word stamps and I stamped some additional little phrases. That way I can cut those out too and use them, and I haven't wasted the white border around. So that's kind of one idea, if you have some kind of blank space around, because maybe you're printing this onto tea stained paper or something like that, and you don't want to waste all this good white space. So use your stamps, your different ones, word stamps, or even, you know, postage stamps or anything like that, just to use up that paper. But what I did when I made the copy of the colored one, get this out of the way, I turned it to sepia. So I had to export it first as a JPEG so that I could manipulate the color and the size. And then on mine, when you go to tools, there's an adjust size and adjust color. So I hit adjust color and it brings up a little box. And there's all kinds of things that you can adjust, contrast, saturation, highlights and shadows and all that kind of stuff. So you can warmth, color warmth, and intensity, that kind of thing. So do whatever adjustments you want. You could make these look different colors. But the other thing you can do is there's a slider that's just sepia. So I just moved it to where I liked, and also I think I did exposure to kind of lighten it up. And I have all these nice grungy sepia colored ones. You can do the same thing to get them to be black and white by changing the exposure, and I believe it might be saturation I'm thinking of. Play around with them, you'll get different colors, and then you just save it as that other file, and now you'll have that one. And then you can do another one, another color, but just remember to duplicate your original every time so that you're not getting rid of your original. So that's one way that I like to manipulate color. You can even do it on things like this that are color. You just have to remember that it's going to do the whole page. You can't just do just that item, you know, individually, unless you duplicate the file, crop out just that item, and then adjust the color, you know, that sort of thing. So you can do that. It ends up really kind of extending the digital kit that you had to have many more options. Okay. The other thing I like to do besides adjusting the color, she did it in this one part of the kit. She did not do it in this one part of the kit. I had to manually do that myself. The other thing that I like to do is change the size. So in this kit, for example, this was the original size of the labels. I printed them out for the first time and thought, well, those are great, but they may be kind of big. You know, I might want some smaller ones. So the easiest way to do that, even if you're not going to change it from a PDF to a JPEG, is to, in my printer, when I pull up preview and print, it gives me the option of how many per page. Mine will let me do 1 per page, which would do this. It lets me do 2 per page, which is this. It lets me do 4 per page, I think, 6, 9, and 16. I think it does increments like that. So that's the easiest way to change, and it will just scale. It will basically repeat this exact same thing, which I lied. I did this separately, and I'll tell you about that. Is you see that these are identical, okay? And it's because I said print 2 per page. On this one, the other choice you have is she had 2 different, the file came with 2 different quote sheets. And I thought, well, if I'm going to make them smaller, why don't I just do 1 of each instead of the same, you know, one? I'm traveling back and forth between studios, so I want to be limited in what I carry back and forth, but I want the most bang for my space. So for me, creating a document that had each of those pages on 1 page was a good thing. So I just, you know, took this one, plugged it into a Illustrator document, and then plugged the other one in, scaled them so they both fit on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, and printed them out. When you do labels and things like this, even these kind of labels or these kind of labels, one way, and I don't know if I did it on here or not, I think I did, is print them out on sticker paper. Yeah, I did. So I've printed this out on white sticker paper that has the solid back. And then now it's just really easy, you know, to cut these apart. I can cut them apart ahead of time and have all my little pieces, or just leave them and, you know, cut them out as I need them. So that's kind of a fun thing to do with your labels and these kind of labels, to get different sizes. I had done the same thing on these. This is the full sheet, another full sheet. And I've put a note up here, 92%. I think because it came from A4 size paper and I printed it onto, and I said fit to my page, which was US letter, it scaled it down to 92%. But because I have this border all the way around, I could tell it to fill the page, and it would make those labels a little tiny bit bigger, so they're 100%. So just be aware of how much space you have around, that you are not going to end up cropping anything from your design if you want it to be the maximum size possible. For labels like this, that could be important for you. I did the same thing with this one, telling it to print 2 per page. So it printed all my labels a little bit smaller, which is also a nice size for little journaling cards. So now I have larger ones and smaller ones. Now you may notice, or not, that these two look a little more pale than this is. Apples to apples here. And same thing here. Now the reason these two are lighter is I accidentally didn't change my printer setting from the previous thing I had printed. But it's a nice example to show you what happens. So if you have a thin paper setting on your choices for your type of paper, that thin paper setting puts out less ink, so it just makes it made it a little more pale. That thin paper setting is what you would use if you're printing on vellum or tissue paper or newsprint paper, any thinner paper. What it does is it's going to put less ink out because you don't need as much ink on that thinner paper, or it'll just make it too wet. So you can actually intentionally set that if you wanted something to be a little more faded looking, a little more washed out kind of thing. So labels and word labels. Same thing on, these are from Fox Creative, from Tracy Fox. And these are, you know, little journal cards. This is the normal size. And then again, maybe I want some smaller ones, or I want to use them as a little, you know, corner tuck on a page. Then you can tell it to print 2 per page, and it just automatically made them smaller. So that's the easy way to change the size. Obviously, I could tell it, you know, in my settings, but that's just a quick, easy way to get a different size out of your digital kit. Now you have lots of things, so I don't need this one right now. The other kit that I bought that I kind of did some manipulating to is an office papers one from Bohemian Crafting. It's a great kit. It's got, I did that one, and the maps both came from Eva, and they were all solid whole pages on A4 size of different types of office papers and office forms and that sort of thing, which I'm always looking for. But, you know, to collect the amount that she had in that kit would take me forever. So I went ahead and purchased the kit. I went ahead and printed this one on my 8.5 by 11 paper, but without changing anything. And you can see it cropped a little bit off the ends. Hers probably had another border here because the paper was longer and narrower. And you can see I have a blank space to the side because this was A4, which would have filled up, you know, it would have been narrower and then a little bit longer. So I was able to just say fit it to my page, you know, I printed it on my page. If I would have said fit to my page, it would squish it all down a little bit, you know, and make it fit. But I just wanted to show you that example of if you're printing and on its original size onto a different size paper. The other thing that I like to do, especially for something like this with lines, and the why I wanted to buy a kit like this, was I like on the back side of journal cards to have lines. So sometimes I'll just go ahead and distress it myself and then use a stamp or something like that, or hand draw the lines. If you watched my really, really early videos before I had very many tools at all, I was really taking a ruler and a sepia pen and actually making all the lines. So this is just kind of fun because it's already distressed and all that, and just much quicker to do. So I took this page, and then, like I said, I put it into another document, and I put it in, I used Adobe Illustrator. You could use whatever, you know, program you have. Even just a Word program, you may be able to do this. I haven't tried that. But put it, you know, put 2 of the same thing side by side. And now I have something that I could use as a folio. I could print this, you know, I could print a design. Let me find something that I would do that with. Like I could take this, you know, this page, which would be nice, folded in half as a folio. And if I printed this on the back side, now I have, you know, it's just done, and now it's just decorating. So that's just kind of a fun thing to do too. So I like to turn them so that they're going the direction that I want them to go. Another one of her papers was kind of this graph paper. I actually printed this twice. This is actually 2 of her papers. The first one I put down had some faded lines, and they were going this direction. But they were so faded out that when I printed it, you didn't even see the lines. So I printed on the same side again with this graph paper. And then I printed Tracy's tag on this side. So now all I need to do is cut these out and decorate them. And I already have something nice on the back, but it's still good for writing. So, you know, that's something that you might want to do. The other thing that I like to do with things like that, maybe I have made a journal card already and I need something on the back side. So, or I have a thin piece of paper that I want, you know, I want to decoupage different pieces or scraps or something. I like to have a sheet that I can print out that has a bunch of different size potential journal cards that kind of have writable backs. So what I did was I took all of, not all, but I took some of her pages, her office papers, and just scaled them down to make this sort of collage of paper so that I can print it on one piece of cardstock, cut them out, and now it's already kind of thick. And if I wanted to then, you know, use scraps and decorate the back side, then I have journal cards that are already printed on one side. So that's another thing. Again, I'm not allowed to take this and then sell it as a digital kit in a digital kit that I make or anything. This is for my own use because I don't have the license to do that. So I can't share that with you. But I'm giving you the idea that you can take different elements, and it may be from different people's kits. You crop what part you want, put it on your own thing, make a collage. Now you have it for your future use. Again, your own future use, that you can, I can make a card then if I had printed out on this other side. And I think there's probably something in here that has, I don't know, to show where I did that. Oh, I put one of her little pieces here, So this can be a part of this project and I can sell that. I just can't sell this little collection that I put together. Okay, so that's kind of some ways to use it. What else have I not gone over? The other thing is, the other things that you might want to print on. I love printing on vellum, just for different, and I think I did one in this. You could print on cheap copy paper, especially if it's going to be something you tear up for collage or is a background. They're going to have lots of things on it. Print it on cheap copy paper and don't even print it at the highest quality if it's just going to be used for background or collage or something like that. I like to use higher quality paper. If I was going to do it as part of a folio, then I want to do it on maybe hammer mill 32-pound paper or cardstock. Or for my Epson EcoTank printer, I use Epson Premium Presentation Mat. It's like 44-pound. It's a little heavier, not too heavy. The quality comes out beautiful. And then I can just do some decorating on it without a ton of decorating on it. The other thing I like to print on, like I said, is vellum. And this is like one of my background pages, but you can see it's just really pretty done on vellum. And then you can layer them, make vellum pockets that you can see through, is really nice. Or even just, fold this as a like I did in my my Bodhi journal, which is a ghost town. I really like to have these decorated vellum pages, and then you kind of see something through to the next one. So printing on vellum, you can emboss the vellum then and even give it another feel, which is what I have done on these little envelopes windows. So, print on vellum. The digitals you get will have a whole different look than printing it on regular paper. The other thing I really love printing on, and I do use this a lot, is all of these, I believe, I print on tea-stained paper. So that the back, no, some of these aren't, I'm lying. So, the back then is already tea-stained. I mean, obviously you're kind of wasting it if all you're doing is gluing this to something else. But I like the texture it gives it. Because it's tea-stained, it's not being printed on white paper. So it is going to have, that different texture and maybe a little different color than it would have if I painted or printed on bright white paper. So I like that, especially for anything that has a vintage look. For sure for the maps, even like these vintage office papers I've done on tea-stained paper. All of these maps I printed on tea-stained paper. And if you've never if you've never done tea-stained paper, I made this mistake very early on, where I printed my item and then I tea-stained it. It was way too acidic, and even just getting inkjet printer, pages wet, all it does is kind of smear you never know what color it's going to come out depending on how much color it used for whatever your picture is. So that was a mistake. I still use those because they look just really grungy. But what you want to do is tea-stain your paper first. All of these, I actually lay a garbage bag out on my studio floor and just put the paper down and have a spray bottle with tea in it, spray both sides and just let it dry, and then iron it. And then I keep a pile of it by my printer, and even just with that amount of wrinkle, it works fine. So I put it in my printer and go for it. I feed, in my other studio, I use my Epson EcoTank printer, so I just put this all in the back feeder just because it's easy. And I haven't had any, you know, paper jams or anything like that. So tea stain paper, one of my favorite things to print on. Obviously cardstock is good. The other thing that I like to print on is fabric. And I've gone over how to do this too. There's many ways. You can find lots of videos. I have a video on my favorite way to do it, and I'll put that down in the description, a link to that one. But just real quick, easy way to tell you is I take those full sticker sheets and I pull the sticker backing off, and then I stick the sticky part onto a piece of fabric, make sure that all the wrinkles are out, and then trim around the edges so you don't have any loose bits like I just pulled off, so that those don't get caught in your printer. And then just run it through your printer, and you'll get, and I do it just on, you know, normal quality normally. And I will show you kind of my favorite kit that I have done that with. I do a lot of things on fabric, and I really like it. Let's see, in the pile here. Oops. So this is one that I still have on the sticker backing. I have a kit in my Etsy shop that is vintage book covers. And so, you know, you can see this is the sticker paper. It's still on here. I find it is easier to store if I leave it on the sticker paper, if I want to put it like in a file folder or something. Otherwise, you know, it's a piece of folded fabric or crumpled fabric. So it's just the sticky back paper. And you can usually use, I wouldn't be able to do it now because it's been on here for a long time, but if you do them right away, you can usually print one, pull it off, and reuse the sticky back for sometimes 2 or 3, you know, just depending on how much stickiness you still have. So that's one way to do it. I've used freezer paper, you know, and that kind of thing. There's lots of ways, like I said, but it's just a fun way to get that fabric book cover feel, which this is an original book. And then this is, you know, obviously my printed one. I do a border around, usually of the book page or something. It could just be blank, so that if I'm covering a cereal box or something like that, I have this amount to pull around. So I love small books, so all these are actually the original book size. And then, you know, you can use them for book covers, or even just like a you know, a little small, no spine kind of booklet. But I have a whole bunch of these. So I usually keep also by my printer with my tea stain paper, I'll keep a bunch of fabric covered sticker paper all ready to go. And that way, if I want to print something, it's already there and ready to go. So all these are done on fabric, and I think they look great. So you can do those. I have also done her French Chateau, Rachel's French Chateau from Roxy Creations on fabric too, that I can use. That way you can kind of, you know, decorate a spine if you wanted or something like that. So printing digitals onto fabric, also lots of fun. And then these I have done, again, these were old letters. This was another kit from someone. And these were all in her original size, you know, that she scanned them in. So I may want to, you know, take an element. I mean, these would make great pocket sizes and things, but I may want to, you know, take something and make it a different size than it is. So I would copy my file, crop out just the part I want, and then I have it as a separate element that I can change the sizes I want. So lots of things you can do with those digitals, you know, again, for your own use. So these were printed on tea stain paper, same exact letters. So this would have been on like a normal setting on tea stain paper. So my paper setting in my computer, I would have done just bright white paper. And then this is the exact same letter printed on newsprint. So you can see, again, I used a thin paper setting, so it's much lighter, but that's just kind of a fun lightweight paper for an old letter. I'd cut this border off or tear it, you know, and then use it. So I've got them on newsprint. You could also do them on thin stationery or parchment paper, tissue paper, you know, any kind of paper that you normally print things on. So there's that. Okay, so I think I've come close to covering, if I haven't forgotten anything, I'll have to have a sequel. of ways that I like to print and print on things. The other thing that I had mentioned is elements. You know, you might buy elements that you can fussy cut. So these, you know, are printed on either tea stain paper if I wanted them to look a little older, which is kind of a waste because I'm just going to be, you know, gluing it down on something. But, you know, you can print it on just cheap copy paper, this stuff, or cardstock. I think some of these I did on cardstock. And again, changing the sizes. So maybe the original was large, which is pretty large, you know, for an element. So maybe I want them smaller. So what I have done again is ask it to print 2 per page, and it'll just, you know, make them about half the size. So I've done that on all these, fussy cut them out. So now what do I do with all this? So that's going to be in my next video, how I have played around trying to store all these different digitals, whether they're full sheets, the files on my computer, or little fussy cuts. So I hope you found that informative. If you have any questions, if I've left anything out, please ask me in the comments below. If I have kind of gone off the rails and said something totally incorrect, please let me know. So have a great rest of your day. Now go make something. Bye.